My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 32 years old, and 3 months ago, my sister Emma tried to exclude me from the most important day of her life. What she didn't know was that her dream wedding venue, the luxurious Grandview Manor Hotel, belonged to me. And when she found out during her reception toast, in front of 200 guests, her perfect day became the moment that changed our family forever. But before I tell you how watching my sister's face drain of color as she realized her unemployed loser brother owned the five-star hotel where she was celebrating became the most satisfying moment of my adult life, I need you to understand the years of dismissal, condescension, and outright cruelty that led to that moment. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one they whisper about with pity at holiday dinners, then this story is for you. Hit that like button if you're ready for a family drama that'll make you question everything you think you know about success and revenge. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. Trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail of how this unfolded. Let me paint you a picture of my family dynamic. My parents, David and Linda Chen, immigrated from Taiwan in the 1980s with nothing but determination and a belief that education was the key to American success. They built a comfortable middle-class life, dad as an electrical engineer, mom as a high school math teacher. Classic immigrant success story, right? Then came their children. First, my sister Emma, born in 1988, followed by me 3 years later. And from the moment Emma could walk and talk, she was the golden child. Straight A's came effortlessly to her. She was student body president, valedictorian, full scholarship to Stanford for pre-med. Everything our parents had dreamed of when they left everything behind for a better life in America. Then there was me. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bad kid. I pulled decent grades, stayed out of trouble, even played varsity tennis in high school. But standing next to Emma's blazing academic success, I might as well have been invisible. Every parent-teacher conference was Emma's little brother. Every family gathering was relatives asking about Emma's latest achievement and then politely inquiring, "And how's Marcus doing in school?" The real divergence came after high school. Emma sailed into Stanford's pre-med program while I chose business school at UC San Diego. Not Ivy League, not medicine, not what my parents had envisioned. The disappointment was palpable. "Business," my mother had said when I announced my major. "What kind of business? Emma is going to save lives? What are you going to do? Sell things?" That stung more than I let on. But I had a vision. While Emma was memorizing anatomy textbooks, I was devouring everything I could about real estate, development, hospitality management, and commercial property investment. I had this crazy dream of building something from nothing, creating spaces where people could celebrate the most important moments of their lives. College was where I first tasted real success. I started small, buying rundown properties near campus, renovating them, and renting them to students. My parents thought it was just a college side hustle. They had no idea I was building the foundation of an empire. By my junior year, I owned 4 rental properties and had flipped 6 others for profit. I was making more money than most of my professors, but I kept it quiet. My family was still fixated on Emma's medical school acceptance to UCSF. At family dinners, the conversation was always about Emma's MCAT scores, her residency applications, her research publications. "Marcus is doing fine too," Mom would add as an afterthought when relatives asked about her children. "He's studying business." The tone suggested I was majoring in finger painting. After graduation, I made a decision that would define the next decade of my life. Instead of moving back home or taking some corporate job that would make my parents proud, I relocated to Napa Valley. I saw the potential in the wine country's booming wedding and events industry. This was 2015, and destination weddings were exploding. Every weekend, wealthy couples from San Francisco and Los Angeles were driving north, looking for that perfect vineyard ceremony. The problem was inventory. There were plenty of wineries, but very few offered luxury accommodations and full-service event planning. I saw an opportunity that nobody else was talking about. I found a distressed property, a beautiful but neglected 1920s estate called Grandview Manor. 27 acres of rolling hills, formal gardens, and a main house that had seen better days. The previous owner, an elderly vintner named Harold Morrison, was 3 months behind on property taxes and facing foreclosure. The asking price was $2, $8 million. I had about $400,000 in liquid assets from my college real estate ventures. In any rational world, this deal was impossible. But I had something Harold Morrison needed more than money. I had a vision and the energy to execute it. I proposed a partnership. I would take over the property debt, invest my own capital in renovations, and give him a 20% ownership stake plus a lifetime residence in the estate's guest cottage. In return, I got control of operations and development. The banks thought I was insane. A 23-year-old with no hospitality experience wanting to revive a deteriorating estate? 3 lenders turned me down before I found a small regional bank willing to take a chance on my business plan. Meanwhile, back home, Emma was finishing her residency at UCSF. She was dating Thomas Whitfield, whose father owned a chain of medical device companies. Thomas was everything my parents had hoped for in a son-in-law, Stanford MBA, family money, and a clear path to taking over his father's business empire. During this time, my family's perception of me was crystallizing into something painful but familiar. I was the black sheep who disappeared to wine country to play business. When I couldn't make it to every family gathering because I was working 18-hour days renovating Grandview Manor, the narrative became that I was avoiding them because I was embarrassed about my failures. "Marcus is going through a phase," I overheard my mother tell my aunt during Chinese New Year 2016. "He'll figure it out eventually and get a real job." A real job. As if building a business from scratch wasn't real enough. The renovation of Grandview Manor took 2 years and every penny I could borrow, beg, or earn. I lived on site in a construction trailer, learning plumbing and electrical work during the day and managing bookings by night. I taught myself event planning, studied hospitality management online, and networked with every wedding planner, photographer, and caterer in Northern California. By spring 2017, we hosted our first wedding. The bride and groom were tech executives from San Francisco, and their 3-day celebration cost $180,000. When their photos appeared in Martha Stewart Weddings 6 months later, featuring our restored ballroom and manicured gardens, my phone started ringing off the hook. But here's the thing about family dynamics. Once you're cast in a role, it's almost impossible to break free. Even as Grandview Manor began appearing in luxury wedding magazines, even as we started booking events 18 months in advance, my family continued to see me as the son who couldn't get his life together. Emma finished her residency and moved back to the Bay Area to start her private practice. She and Thomas bought a beautiful home in Marin County and became the picture of successful young professionals. Every family gathering was a celebration of their achievements. Emma's growing patient roster, Thomas's promotion to vice president of operations, their engagement announcement. And me? I was still figuring things out in wine country. The irony was devastating. By 2018, Grandview Manor was generating $2 million in annual revenue. I had expanded the property to include luxury guest suites, a world-class spa, and partnerships with Michelin-starred restaurants. We were booked solid from April through October, with a waiting list that stretched 2 years out. I had also quietly acquired 2 more properties, a boutique inn in Healdsburg and a historic mansion in Sonoma that I was converting into another event venue. My net worth had crossed the seven-figure threshold, and I was being featured in hospitality industry publications as one of the 30 under 30 rising stars in luxury event planning. But I made a crucial mistake during these years. I kept my success private, partly out of humility and partly out of a stubborn desire to prove something to my family. I wanted them to notice, to ask questions, to show genuine interest in what I was building. Instead, their indifference only deepened my resolve to keep building in silence. At Emma's engagement party in December 2018, I watched my parents beam with pride as Thomas's father gave a toast about welcoming Emma into a family that understands the value of hard work and success. The implication was clear. Emma was marrying into the kind of family we aspired to be, with established wealth and social status. When relatives asked what I was up to, I just said I was in hospitality in Napa. They nodded politely and changed the subject. The wedding planning began immediately. Emma and Thomas wanted a spring 2019 ceremony, and money was no object. Thomas's family was contributing significantly, and my parents were stretching their savings to ensure Emma had everything she dreamed of. The venue search became a family obsession. Emma toured dozens of locations throughout Northern California, from Napa Valley Estates to Big Sur Cliffs to Carmel by the Sea resorts. She wanted something elegant but not ostentatious, exclusive but not pretentious, impressive but not intimidating. And then, in March 2019, she found it. "I think we found the perfect place," she announced during Sunday dinner. "It's called Grandview Manor in Napa Valley. It's absolutely stunning, like something out of a fairy tale. The gardens are incredible, and the ballroom has these amazing crystal chandeliers. The owner has done an incredible restoration job." I nearly choked on my dumpling. My parents looked impressed. They'd heard of Grandview Manor through friends who'd attended events there. It was gaining a reputation as one of Northern California's most prestigious wedding venues. "It's not cheap," Emma continued, "but Thomas's dad says it's exactly the kind of place that reflects our family's values. We're going to book it for May 15th. What would you have done in my situation? Here was the moment I'd been waiting for. The perfect opportunity to reveal that their unsuccessful son owned the venue where the golden child wanted to celebrate her marriage. I could have said something right then, could have watched their faces change as they realized everything they thought they knew about my life was wrong. But I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a deep-seated need to see exactly how far their dismissal would go. "That sounds really nice," I said instead. "I'd love to see photos when you book it." The next few weeks were surreal. Emma would call me with updates about her communications with Marcus's event coordinator. My assistant Sarah didn't realize the family connection. She raved about the professionalism, the attention to detail, the way every request was handled with care and precision. "The owner seems really hands-on," Emma told me during one call. "Sarah says he personally approves every aspect of the events. He must be incredibly successful to have built something this beautiful." If only she knew. The guest list discussions were another layer of complexity. Emma and Thomas were planning for about 200 people, including extended family, college friends, medical school classmates, and Thomas's business associates. The invitation design process took weeks, with Emma obsessing over every detail from paperweight to calligraphy style. And then came the conversation that would change everything. It was a Tuesday evening in April. I was at Grandview Manor, reviewing final preparations for a weekend wedding, when my phone rang. It was Emma, and she sounded stressed. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something," she said without preamble. "What's going on?" "It's about the wedding. Thomas and I have been working on the final guest list, and we're having to make some really difficult cuts. The venue has capacity limits, and with both families and all our professional contacts, We're way over. I knew where this was going, but I let her continue. I want you to know that this isn't personal, but we're going to have to limit the invite to immediate family only. That means just Mom, Dad, and Thomas's parents and siblings. We really wish we could include everyone, but I'm not immediate family? I interrupted. Of course you are. That's not what I meant. It's just that with space constraints and cost considerations, we need to prioritize. And honestly, Marcus, I wasn't sure you'd even want to come. You never seem that interested in family events anymore, and I know you're really busy with whatever you're doing up there. The dismissal was so casual, so complete, that it took my breath away. My own sister was disinviting me from her wedding because she assumed I wouldn't care enough to attend. Plus, she continued, filling the silence, we're trying to create a certain atmosphere for Thomas's family and his business associates. A lot of important people will be there, and we want everything to be perfect. And there it was. The real reason. I wasn't successful enough, established enough, respectable enough to be part of Emma's perfect day. I understand, I said quietly. I knew you would. You're always so understanding about these things. And maybe we can do something special just for family afterward, like a casual dinner or something. After I hung up, I sat in my office overlooking the gardens of Grandview Manor and felt something shift inside me. For years, I had been patient, understanding, willing to accept my family's indifference to my achievements. I had told myself that their approval didn't matter, that I was building something meaningful regardless of their recognition. But being excluded from my own sister's wedding because I wasn't successful enough, while that wedding was taking place at my own venue, was beyond ironic. It was cruel. I made a decision that night. I wouldn't reveal the truth beforehand. I would let Emma have her perfect wedding at my hotel, surrounded by all the important people she wanted to impress. And then, when she was feeling most triumphant, most validated in her choices, I would give her a wedding gift she would never forget. The next morning, I called Sarah into my office. About the Chen Whitfield wedding on May 15th, I said, I want you to handle every detail personally. Make sure it's absolutely flawless. Spare no expense. Of course, Mr. Chen. Is there something specific you want me to focus on? Just make sure it's the most beautiful wedding we've ever hosted. And Sarah, I'll be attending the reception. Make sure there's a spot reserved for me at the head table. She looked confused, but nodded. Should I contact the bride about the additional guest? No, I said. It'll be a surprise. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. Emma would call me with updates about the final preparations, gushing about how amazing everything looked, how professional the staff was, how perfect the weather forecast looked. I really wish you could see it, Marcus, she said during our last conversation before the wedding. It's like something out of a magazine. The owner has incredible taste. I'm sure it's beautiful, I replied. I hope you have the perfect day you deserve. May 15th, 2019, dawned clear and warm, perfect California wine country weather. I spent the morning at my other properties, handling some business calls and trying to calm my nerves. What I was about to do would change everything between me and my family. There would be no going back. At 4 p.m. I showered, put on my best Armani suit, and drove the 10 minutes from my house to Grandview Manor. I parked in the staff lot and walked through the service entrance, greeting the catering team and checking on last-minute preparations. Everything looked perfect. The ceremony would take place in the Rose Garden at 5 p.m., followed by cocktails on the main terrace and dinner in the grand ballroom. Sarah had outdone herself. The flowers were stunning, the lighting was magical, and every detail reflected the elegant sophistication that had made Grandview Manor Northern California's most sought-after wedding venue. At 4:45, I positioned myself in my office on the second floor, where I had a clear view of the Rose Garden. Guests were taking their seats. and I could see my parents in the front row, dressed in their finest clothes and looking proud but slightly overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding them. Emma looked absolutely stunning in her wedding dress, a classic Vera Wang design that must have cost more than my parents' car. Thomas stood at the altar in his tuxedo, surrounded by his groomsmen, who all looked like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. The ceremony was beautiful. I watched through my window as Emma and Thomas exchanged vows, as my parents wiped away tears, as 200 guests celebrated the union of two successful young professionals who clearly belonged in this world of luxury and privilege. During the cocktail hour, I moved down to the main terrace but stayed in the background, observing. I watched Emma graciously accept congratulations from Thomas's business associates, watched her pose for photos against the backdrop of the gardens I had designed and cultivated, watched her beam with joy at having achieved the perfect wedding she had always dreamed of. At 7 p.m., guests moved into the grand ballroom for dinner. I slipped in through the staff entrance and took my reserved seat at a small table near the back. The room looked incredible. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables set with the finest china, centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath, and a view of the illuminated gardens through floor-to-ceiling windows. The dinner service was flawless. Our chef had prepared a menu of pan-seared halibut and herb-crusted rack of lamb, paired with wines from our partner vineyards. Conversation flowed easily, with guests marveling at the beauty of the venue and the quality of the service. And then came the toasts. Thomas's father stood first, welcoming Emma into their family and praising her intelligence, beauty, and grace. He talked about the importance of choosing the right partner in life, someone who shared your values and ambitions. Emma's maid of honor spoke next, telling stories of their friendship since medical school and Emma's dedication to her patients and her family. Then my father stood up. This wasn't planned. He had asked Emma if he could say a few words, and she had graciously agreed. "I want to thank Thomas and his family for welcoming Emma with such love," he began, his slight accent more pronounced when he was emotional. "Linda and I came to this country with dreams for our children. We wanted them to have opportunities we never had, to achieve things we could never imagine." He paused, looking at Emma with such pride that my heart ached. Emma has exceeded every dream we had. She is a brilliant doctor, a loving daughter, and now a beautiful bride. She has chosen a wonderful husband and a wonderful venue for this celebration. When I see her here tonight, surrounded by such beauty and success, I know that all our sacrifices were worth it. The room erupted in applause. Emma was crying, Thomas was beaming, and guests were reaching for their champagne glasses to toast the happy couple. And that's when I stood up. The room was already quiet, expecting Emma or Thomas to respond to the toast, so my movement caught everyone's attention. I walked slowly toward the head table, my heart pounding but my resolve absolute. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "I'd like to say something." Emma looked confused, then alarmed as she recognized me. Thomas looked annoyed. Who was this uninvited guest interrupting their moment? "For those who don't know me," I continued, "my name is Marcus Chen. I'm Emma's brother." A murmur went through the room. Emma's face had gone white. She was frantically trying to figure out how I had gotten in, why I was here, what I was about to do. "I wasn't invited to this wedding," I said, my voice steady and calm. My sister felt that I wasn't successful enough, established enough, important enough to be part of her special day. The murmur grew louder. This was clearly not going according to plan. Thomas was starting to rise from his chair, probably to have security remove me. "But I wanted to be here tonight to give Emma a wedding gift," I continued. "Something I've been saving for the perfect moment." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped box. But instead of walking toward Emma, I turned to address the room. Emma has spent the evening telling everyone how perfect this venue is, how incredible the owner must be to have created something so beautiful. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I thought she should know who that owner is. I opened the box, revealing a key, an ornate brass key on a velvet ribbon. "This is the master key to Grandview Manor," I said, holding it up for everyone to see. The venue where Emma chose to celebrate her marriage because it represents the kind of success and sophistication she values. The room had gone dead silent. Emma was staring at me with growing horror as she began to understand what I was about to reveal. Emma, Thomas, Mom, Dad, and all the important guests who Emma wanted to impress tonight. I'd like you to meet the owner of Grandview Manor. Me. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that ballroom. Emma's mouth was open in shock. Thomas looked like he'd been slapped. My parents were staring at me with expressions I'd never seen before: confusion, disbelief, and dawning realization. For the past 4 years, I continued, while my family assumed I was unemployed or underemployed or just figuring things out, I've been building this business. Grandview Manor generates over $3 million in annual revenue. We host some of the most exclusive events in Northern California. This property that Emma fell in love with because it represents success and good taste, I created it. I walked over to Emma and placed the key on the table in front of her. Consider this my wedding gift, sister. The knowledge that your unsuccessful brother provided the venue for your perfect day. Emma finally found her voice. Marcus, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? I tried to tell you in 1,000 small ways, I replied. But you were all so convinced that I was a failure that you couldn't see what was right in front of you. You excluded me from your wedding because I wasn't good enough for your important guests. Well, take a look around. Every single thing you're celebrating tonight, the flowers, the food, the service, the beauty that made you choose this place, it's all mine. The room was still silent, but I could see guests whispering to each other, putting pieces together. Thomas's father was staring at me with a new expression, respect mixed with embarrassment. But here's the thing, I continued, my voice getting stronger. I didn't do this for revenge. I did this because I finally realized that I don't need my family's approval to be successful. I don't need Emma to invite me to her wedding for my achievements to matter. I don't need my parents to brag about me at family dinners for my work to have value. I looked directly at my parents, who were still sitting in stunned silence. Mom, Dad, you asked me what kind of business I was going to do when I wasn't going to be a doctor like Emma. Here's your answer. I built a business that creates beautiful moments for families. I built a place where people celebrate the most important days of their lives. I built something that brings joy and beauty into the world. I turned back to Emma, who had tears streaming down her face. Emma, I hope you have a wonderful marriage. I hope Thomas makes you happy. And I hope that someday you'll understand that success isn't just about impressing other people or fitting into their expectations. Sometimes it's about building something meaningful, even if the people who should support you can't see its value. I started to walk away, then turned back one more time. Oh, and don't worry about the bill for tonight. Consider it my wedding gift. Everything, the venue, the catering, the flowers, the service. It's all taken care of. Enjoy your reception. As I walked out of the ballroom, the silence finally broke. I could hear voices rising behind me, guests asking questions, Emma crying, Thomas trying to process what had just happened. But I didn't look back. I walked through the foyer of my hotel, past the front desk where my staff was discreetly trying to pretend they hadn't just witnessed the most dramatic moment in Grandview Manor's history, and out into the warm May evening. The aftermath was swift and intense. By the time I got home an hour later, my phone was ringing constantly. Emma, my parents, relatives who had been at the wedding, even some of Thomas's family members who wanted to apologize for not knowing who I was. I let them all go to voicemail. The next morning, I listened to the messages. Emma's were predictably emotional. Shock, apologies, desperate requests to call her back so she could explain. My parents' messages were more complex. Hurt that I hadn't told them the truth. Embarrassed that they had misjudged me so completely. Proud of what I had accomplished but confused about why I had hidden it. But it was Thomas's message that surprised me most. "Marcus, this is Thomas. I owe you an apology. I had no idea who you were or what you had accomplished, and I should have made an effort to get to know you better before the wedding. Emma is devastated, and honestly, so am I. What you've built is incredible, and the way you handled tonight, letting Emma have her perfect wedding even after being excluded, shows a level of class and generosity that I really respect. I hope we can talk soon." 3 days later, I finally called Emma back. "Marcus, thank God," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I've been going crazy. I can't believe what happened. I can't believe I didn't know. Emma, No, let me talk first. Please. I need to say this." She took a shaky breath. "I was wrong. About everything. I was so focused on what I thought success looked like that I couldn't see what you were actually accomplishing. I was so caught up in impressing Thomas's family and looking perfect that I lost sight of what really matters." She paused, and I could hear her crying. I excluded my own brother from my wedding because I thought he wasn't successful enough. Do you know how horrible that sounds when I say it out loud? Do you know what kind of person that makes me? Emma? I'm not done. Thomas and I have been talking nonstop since the reception. He's mortified that his family didn't make an effort to know you, and he's right to be mortified. You created the most beautiful wedding either of us could have imagined, and then you gave it to us for free even after I treated you like you didn't matter. I listened to her sob for a moment before responding. Why, Emma? Why was it so easy to assume I was unsuccessful? Why didn't you ever ask what I was actually doing? Because I'm a terrible sister, she said immediately. Because I was so wrapped up in my own path that I couldn't imagine yours might be just as valid. Because Mom and Dad raised us to think that there was only one way to be successful, and I never questioned it. She took another shaky breath. And because I was scared that you might actually be doing better than me, and I couldn't handle that. You were always more creative, more willing to take risks, more independent. I stayed on the safe path. College, medical school, residency, practice. You went out and built something from nothing. That takes courage I don't have. This wasn't the conversation I had expected to have. I had been prepared for more defensiveness, more justification. Instead, Emma was owning her mistakes completely. "I don't want your apologies," I said finally. "I want your respect. I want you to see me as your brother who accomplished something meaningful, not as someone you need to feel sorry for." "You have it," she said immediately. "Completely. Thomas and I want to make this right. We want to start over and get to know the real you, the successful you, the you who built something incredible while we were all too blind to see it." It wasn't that simple, of course. Years of feeling dismissed and undervalued don't disappear overnight. But it was a beginning. The conversation with my parents was harder. When I finally drove down to their house in San Jose the following weekend, they were waiting, with a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and hurt feelings. "Why didn't you tell us?" was the first thing my mother said when I walked in the door. "I tried to tell you in every way except explicitly," I replied. "But you had already decided who I was and what I was capable of. Nothing I said was going to change that." My father, who had always been more reserved with his emotions, looked directly at me. "Show us," he said simply. "What?" "Show us what you built. Take us to see this place. Help us understand." So I did. The next day, I drove them up to Napa Valley and gave them a complete tour of Grandview Manor. I showed them the original property condition and the renovation photos. I explained the business model, the revenue streams, the expansion plans. I introduced them to my staff and let them see me in my element, making decisions, solving problems, running a complex operation. By the end of the day, my mother was crying again, but these were different tears. "I'm so proud of you," she said, holding my hands. "And I'm so sorry that I made you feel like you had to prove yourself to us. What you've built is incredible." My father, never one for lengthy emotional speeches, put his hand on my shoulder. "You did good, son. Better than good. You did something we didn't teach you, something we didn't even know was possible. You created something beautiful." The weeks following Emma's wedding became a period of rebuilding relationships and redefining family dynamics. Emma and Thomas made a genuine effort to include me in their lives. They started driving up to Napa regularly, bringing friends to see the property, referring potential clients to me. More importantly, they began asking about my life with real interest. Not polite small talk, but genuine curiosity about my work, my challenges, my future plans. Thomas turned out to be much more interesting than I had given him credit for. He had his own story of family pressure and expectations, and he understood the burden of being constantly compared to an idealized version of success. "I spent my 20s trying to prove to my father that I belonged in his business," he told me during one visit. "I never stopped to ask if I actually wanted to be there. What you did, following your own vision and building something original, that takes guts I'm not sure I have." My parents also began treating me differently. Instead of asking generic questions about how business was going, they wanted details. They started bragging about me to relatives and friends, sending them links to magazine articles that featured Grandview Manor. At the next family gathering, instead of being an afterthought, I found myself fielding question after question about the hospitality industry, real estate development, and entrepreneurship. Relatives who had previously seen me as the disappointing child were now asking for business advice and investment tips. But the most significant change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I stopped seeking my family's approval and started simply enjoying their company. When their pride in my accomplishments became evident, it felt like a bonus rather than a desperate need being fulfilled. 6 months after the wedding, Emma called with news that would complete our reconciliation in the most unexpected way. "Marcus, I have something to ask you, and I need you to really think about it before you answer." "Okay, what's up?" "Thomas and I want to plan an anniversary party for Mom and Dad's 30th wedding anniversary next year. We want to do something really special to show them how much they mean to us and how grateful we are for the sacrifices they made." "That sounds great, Emma. What did you have in mind?" "We want to have it at Grandview Manor. Not as a favor, not for free, but as paying customers. We want to hire you to plan the perfect celebration for them, and we want everyone to know that their son created the venue where we're honoring them." I was quiet for a moment, processing what she was offering. "And Marcus, we want to invite everyone. All the relatives who used to ask about you with pity in their voices. All the family friends who thought you were the disappointment. We want them to see what we were too blind to see, that you built something extraordinary." "You don't have to do that, Emma." "Yes, I do. We all do. You deserved better from us. And this is our chance to make it right publicly, the same way you revealed the truth publicly." The anniversary party took place in October 2020. Due to COVID restrictions, it was smaller than originally planned, but somehow that made it more intimate and meaningful. 50 people gathered in the renovated barn at Grandview Manor to celebrate my parents' 3 decades of marriage. My mother wore a traditional Chinese qipao that she had been saving for a special occasion. My father, usually uncomfortable being the center of attention, seemed genuinely moved by the effort Emma and I had put into every detail. But the moment that meant the most to me came during the toasts. Emma stood up, as I had done at her wedding, but her words were completely different. "I want to tell you all about my brother Marcus," she began, looking directly at me. "A year and a half ago, I thought I knew who he was and what he had accomplished. I was wrong about everything." She gestured around the beautifully decorated space. "Marcus built this place from nothing. He saw potential where others saw only problems. He created beauty where others saw only decay. He took risks that I was too scared to take and achieved success that I was too narrow-minded to recognize." She raised her glass. "Tonight, we're celebrating Mom and Dad's marriage, but we're also celebrating Marcus's vision and determination. Every person in this room is here because my brother had the courage to follow his dreams and the talent to make them reality." The applause that followed felt different from the stunned silence at Emma's wedding. This was recognition, respect, and genuine appreciation. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, I found my parents sitting on the terrace, looking out over the gardens I had designed. "Marcus," my mother said, "come sit with us." I joined them, and we sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, listening to the distant sound of laughter from the remaining guests. "We owe you an apology," my father said finally, "not just for not seeing what you were building, but for making you feel like you had to build it alone." "Dad?" "No, let me finish. Your mother and I came to this country because we believed in the American dream, the idea that hard work and determination could create opportunities that didn't exist where we came from. But somewhere along the way, we forgot that there are many different ways to achieve that dream." He looked at me directly. "We raised you to think there was only one path to success, and then we were disappointed when you chose a different path. We should have been celebrating your independence and creativity. Instead, we made you feel like you had to prove yourself to us." My mother took my hand. "You didn't just build a business, Marcus. You built something that brings families together for their most important moments. You create joy and beauty and memories that will last lifetimes. That's not just success. That's a calling." As I write this story, it's been 18 months since Emma's wedding, and my relationship with my family has never been stronger. But more importantly, my relationship with myself has fundamentally changed. For years, I carried the weight of feeling like I wasn't enough, not successful enough, not respectable enough, not worthy of recognition or inclusion. I built an empire partly to prove them wrong and partly to prove to myself that I mattered. What I learned that night in the grand ballroom wasn't just that my family had misjudged me. It was that I had been allowing their judgment to define my self-worth. I had achieved everything I thought I wanted, but I was still the little boy seeking approval from parents who couldn't see past their own narrow definition of success. The moment I stood up and revealed the truth wasn't really about revenge, though I'll admit it felt pretty satisfying. It was about finally claiming my own narrative. For the first time in my adult life, I was defining myself instead of waiting for others to recognize my worth. Today, Grandview Manor continues to thrive. We've expanded to include a second location in Sonoma County, and we're in negotiations to acquire a historic property in Mendocino. The business that my family once saw as a phase now employs 47 people and has been featured in Architectural Digest, Town and Country, and The Knot. But the real measure of success isn't in the magazine features or the revenue numbers. It's in the relationships I've rebuilt and the peace I've found with who I am. Emma and I are closer now than we've ever been as adults. She's learned to see success as something broader than professional achievement, and I've learned to forgive the blindness that came from her own insecurities and pressures. My parents have become my biggest champions, but more importantly, they've become genuinely curious about my life and work. They visit regularly, not out of obligation, but because they enjoy seeing what I've built and being part of my world. And Thomas? He's become the brother I never knew I wanted. Last month, he left his father's company to start his own medical device consulting firm. He credits our conversations about entrepreneurship and independence with giving him the courage to follow his own vision. The lesson I want you to take from this story isn't about family drama or dramatic revelations. It's about the importance of defining success for yourself and refusing to accept other people's limitations on your worth. For too many years, I let my family's inability to see my achievements make me question whether those achievements mattered. I let their narrow definition of success make me feel like I was failing, even when I was building something extraordinary. If you're in a similar situation, if you're working towards something that the people around you don't understand or value, remember that their blindness doesn't diminish your vision. Their inability to see your worth doesn't make you worthless. Build anyway. Create anyway. Succeed anyway. And when the moment comes for truth to be revealed, make sure you're revealing it from a place of strength and self-knowledge, not from a need for their validation. Success isn't about impressing other people. It's about creating something meaningful and being proud of what you've built, regardless of who's watching or applauding. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have supported you most? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Drop a comment and let me know your story. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family drama and finding your own definition of success. Remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Build your empire anyway.